Now, detonate the reality bomb!
I will build a great, great wall.
Some alien race to come down and threaten us.
Is the singularity near?
The truth is out there.
The military-industrial complex.
The 7 mountains of the influencers of culture.
To be as gods, you know.
Change has come to America.
Catapult of propaganda.
From a secure location on top of the ridge in the heart of the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, this is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
We're in the middle of a supernatural war, but being a warrior for Christ doesn't necessarily mean taking up arms. But it would be interesting to hear from one who has done both, wouldn't it? Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. You'll find us online, vftb.net, our social media site, Twitter. Handle is at viewfrombunker or at Derek Gilbert. You'll find me there, as well as SaviorConnect.com, Parlay.com, OneWay.com, and, of course, Facebook, the Facebook page, View from the Bunker. Our guest is the founder and president of Warrior Refuge, online at warriorrefuge.com. He retired in June of 2018 after serving 32 years in the Army, mainly as a chaplain. His last assignment, based in San Antonio, he was responsible for the religious support at all 75 Army installations worldwide. He has teamed up with the New York Times bestselling author Troy Anderson, a friend who we've interviewed on this program several times before. A forthcoming book on the way called The Army Guide to Armageddon. It is our honor to introduce to you in the bunker Colonel David Giammona. David, welcome to the program.
Derek, thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here. I'm excited about what our conversation is going to entail, and I look forward to to this hour with you.
We had some great conversation. We met at the conference, the Hear the Watchman conference in Orange County. You were there. Right. Troy Anderson was there as well, and we had some great conversation over meals. And
yes,
so just some fascinating stuff. And so I'm remiss in not having invited you on sooner, but glad that we did, and looking forward to reading your book once it's available. 32 years in the military. How did your service change your view of Jesus Christ, of your mission as a Christian? Did you enter the military as a believer?
Yes, I did. In fact, I was in California at Camp Pendleton in a Marine Corps graduation that my brother-in-law was graduating from basic training boot camp in the Marine Corps in 1985. I was sitting there in the graduation, and out of nowhere, a voice, the Lord's voice, came to me powerfully and said, "You're going into the military." And I looked around. I looked at my wife, and I looked around, and I just flabbergasted, because it was so unexpected. But the Lord said, "You're going in the military." And within 3 months of that, I was in seminary. I was had all my paperwork in for the Army to become a chaplain candidate, and off I was running. So yes, it was a supernatural calling, and supernatural all the way through my 32 years.
And just thinking about the divergence of our paths and how they've led to this point where we're, speaking at Christian conferences now, and because 32 years ago, I was a nighttime top 40 radio disc jockey in Peoria on my way to Philadelphia, thinking I was making it now, moving up to the 4th largest radio market in the country. And I'd really hit the big time. And so completely different paths. God clearly has a sense of humor. What was your service like? What is it like for an Army chaplain? I mean, what sorts of issues do you deal with when you are counseling these young men and women who come to you for guidance?
Well, the audience may not know this, but a chaplain is really embedded into frontline units going to war. Normally, as your first, second, third assignment. I know when I was the assignments officer for the chief of chaplains, I was signing these young guys right out of the basic course into a warfighting unit, and off they went to war. That was pretty common. So we chaplains are in the frontline units, infantry, armor, sustainment, whatever you name it, and we're there going with our congregation, so to speak, into training into the front lines, into war, into combat, into wherever they're going, we're going to be there. So counseling didn't always take place in an office in a nice warm with a couch and lamp and all that. It was out in the field in the freezing cold or the blistering sun, and soldiers would open up to the chaplain, and the issues were innumerable, anywhere from chaplain, I want to marry this person, to, hey, chaplain, I need prayer because I'm going into to harm's way tomorrow, to chaplain, what do you think about Jesus Christ and Muhammad? And so, the list is endless of what we could talk about. But, soldiers are human beings and they have the same needs as everybody else, but they're in a very stressful environment.
Well, yeah, they're confronted with their own mortality a little more directly than most of us are. And you're entering the service there in the mid-'80s. You got in prior to the first Gulf War, and a time when our military was starting
Correct.
to take a more active role around the world again. Correct.
When I first got to Fort Bliss, Texas, I was in 143 Air Defense Artillery, which was a Patriot battalion. And I've got to tell you, I got a quick indoctrination into the military and off we were running. Because we were alerted to go to Desert Storm. Our mission was to protect the oil fields in Saudi Arabia, and so we had units all over Saudi Arabia. And the year I was there, during and after the first Gulf War, I spent 30,000 miles on the road, just traveling all around Saudi Arabia, visiting our troops and making sure they were okay.
That's about as many miles as I traveled as an outside sales rep. But again, they didn't have guys trying to drop Scud missiles onto my car.
Yes.
So what did you encounter? What kind of questions did you encounter? I mean, young men and women, again, away from home at an age where many of us are just figuring out who we are as human beings, and they're being asked to, in some cases, take the lives of other human beings who are at the same time trying to kill them. What kind of stress does that put these people under, and what kind of questions did they bring to you when they were under that stress?
I got to go back to the preface of my book, of the book we're writing, Troy and I, because I think it really answers that question very well. The reason we're writing the book, and the reason I'm on here today, and the reason God has given me the ministry he has, is because when I went to war with soldiers, I don't believe our soldiers were prepared to see the kind of things that they were going to see. They witnessed death firsthand, destruction, their friends getting hammered by the enemy, and on and on it goes. And they changed. These young men, a lot of them who had faith in God, didn't understand, through the horrors of war, when they got back to civilization and back to the United States, they couldn't put two and two together. Why would a God who is of love and peace and would protect us allow my friend to die, or allow me to get injured, or allow all this destruction and devastation around me? A lot of them's faith changed. They lost their faith. Even chaplains I've known that went over there one way and came out the next, because they were just not prepared to see and experience what they were seeing over there. And so as I watched this firsthand and listened to their stories and prayed with them in the hospitals, in the cash units, we call hospitals over there, in the front lines, in the forward operating stations, wherever I would find myself with soldiers, the question always would come up about their faith. Chaplain, I believe that God would protect me. I would believe that God would be with me. And when I seen all my buddies die, and when I've got injured, it became a totally different look at who God really is and what he is all about. And so they came back different than when they went over there.
That's a really good point, because a variant of a question that we often get from skeptics: how can a good and loving God allow bad things to happen to good people? How would you address that question? How do you deal with that?
I don't think we have enough time on this broadcast, but I'll delve into that with you. First of all, I really don't believe, even most Christians believe or have a good worldview of who God really is. You know, I really don't think they do. And in fact, you know, I've come to understand that God is way and above beyond our realm. I mean, he is from everlasting to everlasting. He not just works in the day and day, but he works in the eternal. And for him, you know, taking people, you know, I did a calculation just a while back for the book, and I came to look at 150,000 people die on this planet every day. That's a lot of folks, and it's in the millions at the end of the year. And that's one statistic. And so God takes a very different view of life and what is going on in our lives. He looks at it from the perspective of eternity. Mm-hmm. And if we just look at God from our perspective, we don't understand him. But God is many-faceted, many-sided, and we just have this narrow view of a loving, caring God, which he is, but he's much more than that. That's what I'm trying to say. Mm.
It struck me, too, that a lot of this comes down to free will, that God created us, even the angelic realm, created those entities who rebelled, Satan and the third of the angels, the stars, as they're depicted in the book of Revelation, with the ability to make choices. And God does not intervene to prevent us from making bad choices, which seems almost counterintuitive, but it seems to me that that's one aspect of his love. He has loved us. He loves us so much that even though he knew, just like parents who have a child know that at some point that child is going to start trying to do things they shouldn't ought to do, God created us with the ability to make those choices, and he does not take those choices away, even when those choices go against his wishes.
Yes, so that's, of course, another conversation. But the fact of the matter is this. Soldiers who would always come to me and say, hey, chaplain, why did my friend die? Where was God? Why didn't God prevent him from the enemy's fire? In fact, at one point, I came under the enemy's fire. I mean, a sniper had it in for me, and it wasn't for the Lord, I wouldn't be here right now. So I can't tell you all the answers. And I would tell these young soldiers, look, I don't have all the answers of why God does what he does. But you have to understand something. We have a very limited, I would tell the soldiers this, we have a very limited viewpoint and a worldview of who God really is. We live in the finite, and we've only lived a few years. He's lived for all of eternity past and will live on for all eternity future. And we are a blip on the radar, as we say in the Army. And the fact of the matter is, we have to understand that from God's perspective, all of this makes sense. And that's what the Bible tells us. You know, we may not understand all things, but we have to leave it into the hands of a loving creator that has our best interest in heart, even though it doesn't seem like it at the time.
Yeah, if we could understand the mind of God, then by definition, we would be God, and that is pretty clearly not the case. When you're responsible, as you were in your last posting, for religious support at all of the Army installations around the world, you get a pretty broad view of the types of belief systems that are being brought into those installations by the various soldiers that are deployed. How has that changed over the last 30 years? What sort of trends are you noticing amongst the soldiery, the members of our armed forces over the last 3 decades?
Yeah, I think the biggest trend is the fact that many soldiers don't have a denominational preference. Because we ask them when they come on active duty, what is your denominational preference? Are you Catholic? Are you Baptist? Are you Presbyterian? Are you Buddhist? Are you Muslim? And many of the soldiers, that has become a big category, that they're undeclared, in their obedience or relevance to a denomination. I think more and more soldiers are not interested in denominations, but they are interested in spirituality and really the reality of Jesus Christ. I can tell you that.
Why do you think that is?
I think our society, our soldiers are a reflection of our society. And our society really is moving more and more away from denominational preferences to more of a, are you a believer? What is your stance, in terms of Jesus Christ and what you believe about him, more than a religious experience in a walled church somewhere. I think we're getting away from that. And, of course, America is becoming more and more irreligious or unreligious, more secularized as time goes on. And so we're faced with that in the military as well.
Now, you commented that you saw the stress of being under fire sometimes led soldiers to reject their faith because they couldn't reconcile how God could allow this to happen. How often did you see it happen in the reverse, where people came in as unbelievers who saw something that made them change and realize that, hey, wait a minute, this Bible here that you've been telling me about, there's actual truth in here. This is true.
I have seen a lot of soldiers come to Jesus Christ throughout many years, not just in combat, but in basic training. Anytime a person, this is what I've come to believe, anytime a person gets into a serious situation, they, as the saying goes, there's no atheist in foxholes. And in combat, I saw very few people who are non-religious or atheistic or agnostic. They all came to believe, as they came into combat, that, there's a God out there. And so a lot of my experience has been bringing people to Jesus Christ in the military throughout many years. And when I was a basic training chaplain at Fort Benning, every week the chapels would be packed and people would be at the altar crying and giving their life to Christ because they were in the most difficult of days in basic training, let alone experiencing combat. So anytime you get into a serious situation, especially life and death, it really makes you reflect, what is this life all about? And the big question they had is, chaplain, if I die, am I going to see the Lord? Am I going to go to heaven?
Sure.
And so I got to pray with them many times before going into combat and say, hey, look, we're going to pray. We're going to believe for your salvation, and whatever happens to you, and we're going to believe for the best, but whatever happens, God has you in the palm of his hand.
One of the things that we discussed as we were getting to, acquainted in Orange County at the conference there was prophecy, Bible prophecy, end times prophecy. What is it about end times prophecy that you find interesting or important?
I have really been a student of prophecy all my life as a believer, and I became a believer in 1974. So you do the math. It's been a long time that I've really been a student of prophecy. And when I grew up in the 70s, it was West Coast movement. Chuck Smith was leading a revival throughout, California. Got to pray with him and see him and talk with him and hear him. And he was very much interested in the end times, the second coming, and all that. And then Hal Lindsey's late great Planet Earth, another thing that really gripped my heart and got me really interested. And of course, as a reason, when I told Troy this, and it's going to be in the book, of course, in the future, but the reason I'm doing this right now is the Lord appeared to me in a cloud in the form of a lion in Texas. I was out on a prayer journey, a prayer garden in Kerrville, Texas, and right after I talked to Troy Anderson about doing this book, and I prayed, and up in this clear blue sky, there is a cloud, and it forms into the head of a lion, supernatural. There was no other clouds in the sky. And the cloud spoke to me, Derek. It was the Lord. He said, I am calling you to be an end time prophet. I'm asking you to prepare the church for my coming and warn the world. Those are the things that the Lord specifically said. And so it was reiterated right then and there that's what I was supposed to be doing. And that's what I am doing today.
Given the way the prophets of the Old Testament were treated, Elijah got so depressed he ran away to a cave and hid and begged God to take him. Jeremiah was dropped down a well. Isaiah, according to some extra biblical text, was actually sawn in half. What was your reaction when you got that message?
I want to say, here we go again, because, people have asked me for many years, why are you a chaplain? I said, because the Lord called me to be a chaplain. I'm here today because of supernatural calling. And I'll have to answer the question that you just asked. The same thing is, hey, when the Lord asks you to do something, of course, I've been in the military a long time. I'm not one to tell a general officer, hey, I am not doing that, buddy. I'm going to go do my own thing. That's just not the way it works in the military, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to find yourself, as Lieutenant Colonel Vidman did just recently, in a bad situation. And we could talk more about that later. But the fact of the matter is, I've always tried to be obedient to the voice of the Lord. And I said, yes, Lord, I'm going to do that. And just open the doors and give me the direction. And yes, I know it's difficult. Going to war is difficult. The whole 30 years in the military, although I loved every moment of it, there were some very stressful times. So yes, I'm very well aware that the calling demands sacrifice. And so I'm taking the eternal perspective on it, Derek, that, one day we're going to be in heaven, all this will be behind us, and we will rejoice in what we've done in this body.
Yes, as Paul said, that the glory that is to come will make the trials that we're enduring now seem as nothing. And, there was a reason that in the Bible he is called Lord of Hosts, which actually literally means Yahweh of armies. He is a military commander and the greatest general of in all history. So how do you envision this role playing out? I mean, what is the message that you want to bring to the body of Christ? Or that you're called to bring, I should say.
Right. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look around and know we're in spiritual trouble in America. The church really has gone the wrong direction for many years. And I've been part of that, so I'm not going to blame it. I'm part of the church. We're part of the church. And I've been in a lot of mega churches. I was mentored in a mega church. I understand the mega church. I came out of one just recently in San Antonio with Brother Hagee. Had It was a great ministry there in Texas. But I really think the vast majority of the church in general is not prepared for what is about to happen, and what is happening right now, brother, with all the things going on at the first of the year, which the Lord spoke to me that was going to happen before our book came out. We had the viruses, plagues, fires, all these things happening. I just don't believe the church is ready, prepared, and ready to fight the next battles. It's not even ready to fight the current battle. I think we're just on, if you excuse my expression we use in the military, we're on our rear ends right now, biblically, spiritually, and we need to get about the Father's business because time is running short. And that's the message I'm bringing to the church.
Yeah, you mentioned viruses, and while we're recording this, and full disclosure, we're recording this in the evening of Wednesday, February 12th. This will be uploaded for February the 16th. By the time you hear this number will be obsolete, but Sharon just texted to me from the other room the most recent update on the coronavirus, which is now called COVID-19.
Right.
The most recent number, which was just released apparently within the last few minutes, we've seen a spike now from about 42,000 confirmed cases suddenly to over 60,000, and jump in the number of deaths to 1,365. Those numbers are probably not accurate to begin with. Sharon and I have been tracking this for a bit, and we're seeing China redefining what it means to be infected with this disease, and there is evidence from some citizen journalists on the ground that suggest that those numbers are much, much higher. But having said that, just stepping back and looking at this in a bigger picture, we see the pestilence spreading from China. And in fact, just yesterday, a professor of public health at Hong Kong University said that this, if it's not stopped, may infect up to 2/3 of the earth. While that's going on, we've got a plague of locusts ravaging East Africa. They say this is the worst they've seen in Kenya in 70 years, a biblically significant number. Wars and rumors of war, of course. We've got the proposed peace treaty, which was not well received by the Arab League and many of the Israeli settlers living in Judea and Samaria, not happy about this new map that's being developed. Earthquakes. There was a magnitude 5+ earthquake off the coast of Fukushima earlier today, where they've got 1.2 million tons of radioactive water that they can't figure out how to dispose of. So far, the leading suggestion seems to be dump it into the ocean.
Yeah, that's a good one.
How are these times different from, say, 100 years ago, David, when we saw 17 million dead in the World War I and another 50 to 100 million in the great influenza of 1918? What is it that leads you to believe that we are closer today than ever before?
Well, first, let me just answer the first part of that. You're talking about World War I, World War II statistics. Mm-hmm. The world has not seen that in 70 plus years from World War II, where 60+ million people around the world died, civilian and military. Right. Russians killed 40 million of their own people. 6 million Jews died, plus millions more of other nationalities. We haven't seen those kind of numbers in the recent years, and so we're kind of, we get really worried, and it's rightfully so if a few people, pass away or die in a plague, or because we're not used to it. But what makes me think that we're in the end of the end times is a myriad of things, not just one. First of all, Israel becoming a nation in 1947 is the start of it. I really think that is the start of the ticking end times prophecy time clock, so to speak. And then we have the 67 war, then the 73, and then Jerusalem becoming a capital, or hasn't always been the capital, but the United States, recognize it under Donald Trump. Right. And so Israel really is for me, a lot of people ask me, where is America in Bible prophecy? And I'm going to have to be honest. I'm like Joel Richardson in this one, like Joel and I have discussed this. America is not in Bible prophecy, not, in a focused way. It's the Middle East. It's Israel. It's Persia, which is Iran. It's Turkey, which, the 7 churches of the Revelation are there. And so it's a Middle Eastern centric book. And so my focus really is not just plagues around the world, volcanoes erupting, fires, 12.5 million acres destroyed in Australia, 1 billion animals. I mean, all these other things happening. But what is really going on in the Middle East with Iran, its tentacles throughout all of the countries, warfare happening there, and on it goes. And I believe Turkey is the next major player in this out of the book of Daniel, chapters 7 and 8, where Turkey is going to rise. And out of Turkey, I believe the Antichrist will arise. Not a lot of people agree with me on that. They believe it's going to come out of Europe. It's a Eurocentric type of Antichrist. But I think Islam, the rise of Islam, the rise of the Middle East, and what's going on there is really where my focus has been for a long time, because it's the biblical centric thing that's going on that we need to be aware of.
You and I are on the same page in that regard. I think Islam plays a key role in the end times. Maybe not the way Joel Richardson does. I know he's looking for an Islamic Antichrist. I disagree with that view. I think Islam is got a different role to play, and one that doesn't end well for Muslims, sadly. But I agree that Turkey is going to play a key role. And not only do you've got the 7 churches of Revelation, but going back even further in Middle Eastern history and references in the Bible. For example, Isaiah 14 verses 12 and 13, but then Ezekiel 38 and 39, and those references to the sides of the north, the heights of the north, the uttermost parts of the north, that sort of thing, point to a specific mountain that was sacred to the main antagonist in the Bible, which is Baal. Right. And, Jesus identified Baal as Satan in the New Testament. So, okay, that seems to fit together pretty well as far as the puzzle pieces of prophecy. How would you see this geopolitically? And I know we can only go so far because we're dealing with a supernatural enemy here. And we get caught up in the headlines. Is it Erdogan? Is it Assad? Is it Putin? Maybe not any of those, but there's a spirit that's going to be behind somebody who emerges. How would you see this coming about? How would you see this developing?
Well, if you go back in history and just in recent history, if you were a believer in Germany, I'm talking about a born again believer, not a nominal believer, because the nominal church actually supported Adolf Hitler, by the way. I've done some research on this. The Lutheran Church, in fact, Martin Luther, I don't want to get too far off, but Martin Luther actually wrote a book on killing and destroying the Jewish population that Adolf Hitler read and wanted to implement. The Martin Luther hated the Jews. People don't realize that. Although he was, the reformer and the founder of the modern Protestant movement from the 1500s. However, having said all that, if you were a believer anywhere in the world, but especially in Europe and Germany, I think I would have believed that Adolf Hitler was an antichrist. No question about it, because of, he's killing the Jews. He's, going to conquer the whole world, and on it goes. I don't think we know who it is, but the spirit of Antichrist is stronger on this planet than ever. And I believe that the coming Antichrist will soon be revealed. And the Apostle Paul said that there were two things would happen before the coming of the Lord. The great rebellion, and I believe that's a rebellion of the believers of the church, not the true believers, but we're seeing that rebellion here in the United States in an unprecedented scale. I would never believe that, there would be churches ordaining practicing homosexuals and lesbians, and they would be doing all the things that are not biblically centric. So that rebellion is taking place. But the other thing would be the revelation, the revealing of the man of sin or lawless one or the Antichrist. I think we're going to see that in our lifetime, that's being prepared right now. Whether he comes out of Europe or the Middle East, he's going to come out of somewhere, and it's going to fool most of the world because he's going to work miracles and he is going to come up with solutions that the world is really grappling with.
It's an interesting observation, and it is frighteningly consistent with something we're seeing in China right now. Sharon and I talked about this last week on our Sci Friday program for SkyWatchTV, that China is employing surveillance techniques on their own citizens that are being welcomed by the citizens of China, who are really frightened, many of them really frightened by what's happening with this COVID-19 coronavirus. To us in America, it's kind of startling when you realize that people are being tracked through facial recognition software, and alerts are being sent out in real time to other people through the big social media site that they use, their WeChat, to alert people, for example, on a train, that somebody who was in contact or suspected to have been in contact with somebody infected with the virus is sitting on the train near you, because they can be tracked through their phones, GPS. And the people in China are actually grateful that Big Brother is following them around and alerting health officials and the police to get this person off the street because they may have this virus. From a biblical prophetic standpoint, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to see how that kind of a system could be implemented during a crisis like this and then really used by a future one world government.
Yes. We have technology that's people don't even realize it is there, especially in the military, because most of our technology comes either out of NASA, space exploration, or it comes out of the military. We're at the cutting edge of many things. There are things in the military, tracking systems, things that special forces uses that people don't even realize are available right now. So yes, the technological explosion, facial recognition, your eyeball lasers. I mean, all the things that are going on right now are nothing compared to what is going to happen in the immediate future. As the world reels, all it takes is a 1930s, 1929 great, explosion of our financial systems, And we're going to see what Franklin Roosevelt did in 1933. I just ran across this the other day. He wrote an executive order, said, from now on, right now, from this day, your gold is no longer can be used. It's illegal. We're confiscating all the gold in America, and we're bringing it back to Washington, D.C., which ended up, of course, at Fort Knox. Mm-hmm. And so all it takes is a thing like Great Depression, which we almost experienced again in 2008. We've been very close. A world economic shaking, and people will be flocking for big government to tell them what to do, and that will be the rise of the Antichrist eventually, because he's going to have the answers that people are looking for.
It's interesting. I was just reading earlier before we connected this afternoon on a new economic indicator developed by researchers at MIT and an investment firm. This is a paper that was just published within the last couple of weeks, where they used a type of data analysis to look at a few things like, let's see, industrial output and the yield curve on bonds, non-farm income, and some other things. And they tested this new theory, this new indicator that they developed going back to, I think, the late 1950s, and found that when it passes a certain threshold, that there's a 70% chance of a recession within the next 6 months. And we just crossed over that threshold here within the last month or so. So we may be seeing this kind of a perfect storm where we're on the verge, it appears, of an economic downturn, something I've believed for a while now, but I'm not an economist. I just play one on TV. While at the same time, we've got this coronavirus, the COVID-19, now that it's got an official name, spreading out there. And as I mentioned earlier, we just saw a spike in the official numbers for some reason from about 43,000 up to 60,000. And most of those new cases coming in mainland China, maybe the result of those new temporary hospitals they've got built in better numbers. I don't know. But we see that. And as it spreads to the West, we may here in the West be shaken out of our stupor, where we're paying attention to something other than the impeachment and the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I really think that's a diversion, Derek, honestly do, to what's really going on in the world. I think Satan is trying to inoculate, especially people in the United States, to be inwardly focused about what's going on and not really paying attention that's what's going on in the world. Not just the viruses, not just the fires or the economies, but many things. In fact, I write a story real quick. I'll share this, that on January 13th of 2018, it was just I was at an ordinary Saturday going to Walmart, my wife and I. And who would have thought that our whole world would have been rocked that morning as we're going to Walmart? And the reason is because I got a phone call from my daughter who was living in Hawaii, and she's crying hysterically. And at that point, I was on active duty. And she said, Dad, she said, we just found out that Korea fired nuclear ballistic missiles, and they're headed our way, and they're going to be here within a half hour.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
And so there, and then and there, your whole world can really change. One kind of thing, one phone call, one radio announcement, one thing that says, hey, this is happening. And I'm thinking in my mind, what happened there? I mean, I'm on these military radios. I'm on military, recall rosters and all that. No one's called me and said we've had, we're going to war with North Korea. Well, it was, as you know, it was a fake, as they call fake news, but someone had pulled the missile, ballistic missile threat system in Hawaii, and it was, they said it was not a drill, but it is actually a false statement, and the guy got in serious trouble. I think he got fired for that.
Rightly so.
However, I want to point out one thing. Your world, our world, can change in a moment from, hey, everything is fine, to the whole world is falling apart. So we have to really be prepared for these kinds of things. And right now, I just think we're not there, Derek. We're just not ready for this kind of thing.
And sometimes the announcement isn't hey, we're going to war and this is not a drill. Sometimes it's a few quiet words from a somber-faced doctor in the quiet of his office that can create that kind of sudden shift in your entire world. Your forthcoming book that you're working on with Troy Anderson, The Army Guide to Armageddon, has a very compelling title. Whether that's the final title or not, David, what is the direction that you're taking with the book?
Well, I think as we're working on a new subtitle, I think the subtitle really spells it all: Strategies for Battle-Tested Warfare. So what we do in the book is take a lot of I have personal experiences throughout every chapter book, a couple of paragraphs. We take those experiences and plus Army doctrine, military doctrine. For example, what do we do in basic training? How do you go from being a citizen of the United States and just a regular, ordinary person, maybe have an 8-to-5 job? How do you do that in one day and the next day you are a soldier in the United States Army? How does that transform you, that basic training? Well, in the book, we go through how they do that. How do we transform people? And it's 24/7 for 11 solid weeks, sometimes in infantry. And by the time you graduate, you are a totally different person. You went in one way and you came out another. Well, how did that happen? We take the military doctrine and we transform it and translate it into church talk or the believers talk and what the Bible says about it. So, the book really is going to be about how do you transform from being just a ordinary guy or gal that goes to church maybe on Sunday mornings, has your afternoon dinner, takes a nap, and goes back to work, and nothing really changes. How do you go from that to be a warrior from God? And that's the genesis or the gist of the book. Okay, what's the expected release date of the book? Right now, we're looking at January of this coming year. Okay. So that's what we're looking at right now. I'm hoping to be sooner, but I'll just take the publisher's word for it right now. You get longer deadlines from your publisher than we get from Tom Horn. That's all right. No complaints. So your ministry site website is warriorrefuge.com. So what is your focus now that you have stepped back, you are retired from active duty military? What is your focus now? Well, let me step back from that. So I have just engaged a website, really world-class website developing firm, and they're transforming the whole thing. So we're in the near future, it's going to go to davidjgiammona.com. And it's basically going to be, surrounding the book, the prophetic ministry that we've got of end times things and articles from around from folks like you and from Troy. Mm-hmm. By the way, Troy is a world-class person and editor and writer, and he has really taken this whole thing to another level. So we're working together. He's got a website, prophecyinvestigators.com, which we're going to kind of emulate. And Troy and I have even talked about putting a show together, a weekly broadcast on the end times. We're still kicking that around. But right now I'm doing writing, I'm speaking. I'm actually doing ministry in our local church. I'm helping with some counseling during the week. And we're developing, we have a 46-acre spread out here in Georgia near Fort Benning. And we're developing this retreat center we live in right now into a place where people can come and get some ministry and some help and those kinds of things. So we're working on a lot of different fronts all at the same time. Yeah, when you say yes to that call, God displays a lot more faith in us than we wish he did sometimes. You know that to be certain, right, Derek? Yes, sir. But again, no complaints. Best boss I've ever had. Colonel David J. Giammona, he is at warriorrefuge.com, at least for the short term. Long term, we'll put a link to the website. We'll update that when that changes. And we certainly look forward to hopefully seeing you again at one of these stops along the way this year. Are you still based in Texas? We're actually based in Georgia. Oh, Georgia. Okay, that's right. Yeah. I got a call from Mike Kerr the other day. He wanted me to come to the conference in Dallas. I think it's in Dallas in March. However, I'm going to be in Israel for an entire month, starting at the end of February to the end of March. Wonderful. research on another book. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're heading over there in April to do a little research on the book that we're working on right now too. So, and then back there in October. But yeah, you can't get over to Israel often enough, in my view. So hopefully our paths will cross at some point, but certainly we'll stay in touch. And I want to talk with you again when the book is ready for publication to let people know about it. Appreciated the times that we had to sit and share ideas, and look forward to doing some more iron sharpening in the months and years ahead.
Hey, Derek's my pleasure. God bless. I had a great time with you today.
Colonel David Giammona, U.S. Army, retired. His website, warriorrefuge.com. But bear in mind that is being revised and updated, so just keep your eyes on it for the new and improved website soon. We'll have him back on the program, certainly when his book is ready for publication, if not sooner, because finding somebody who's got the perspective of a military veteran who combines that and reconciles it with a biblical worldview that includes a belief in end times Bible prophecy is a very unique and much needed worldview in this time for sure. Straight ahead, we will update you on what we know about the COVID-19, the coronavirus outbreak as of this recording on Sunday afternoon, February 16th, 2020. That and just a rundown of what's ahead for us here at Gilbert House as A View from the Bunker continues straight ahead.
Watchman presents the Remnant Warrior Training Conference, a 2020 vision, March 5th through the 8th at the Hilton DFW Conference Center in Dallas, Texas. God is raising up a people. This conference is like none other. A prophetic perfect storm is arising, and it's time to join a new class of warriors to rise up and sharpen our skills to protect our families. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high places. So get armed and trained for battle with Dr. Michael Lake, L.A. Marzulli, Pastor Paul Begley, Dave Daubenmeyer, Jamie Walden, Josh Tolley, Phil Bacano, Derek Gilbert, Paul McGuire, and former CIA insider Kevin Shipp. Save $20 with promo code Mike20 or your favorite speaker's code before they run out. Go to HearTheWatchman.com. That's HearTheWatchman.com. You know God is calling you. Discounted rooms and airfare are going fast. Go to HearTheWatchman.com. God will bless you for stepping up.
Talking the walk every Sunday night from our hideout here in the beautiful Missouri Ozarks. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. You'll find us online at vftb.net. Take advantage of our free mobile app for Android and iOS devices. Download all of these programs absolutely free going back to 2009. 11 years of podcast available for free. On Twitter, you'll find us at View from Bunker or at Derek Gilbert. That's where I do most of my tweeting. Stuff related to the program, usually at View from Bunker. Online at at Facebook at View from the Bunker. That's the title of the page. And also taking advantage of some new social media sites that are a little more agreeable to free speech, like Parlay, Savior Connect, and new Gorf.social. This is the former oneway.com. Gorf.social. You find my handle at all of those sites is Derek P. Gilbert. Well, as of this recording, again, February 16th, 2020, the coronavirus outbreak, COVID-19, the official title of the outbreak, the virus itself being called SARS-CoV-2, if I've got that right. I think that's right. SARS, Sudden Acute Respiratory Syndrome, COV, for coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2. But again, the title of the outbreak, the disease outbreak itself, is COVID-19, coronavirus infectious disease 19. The desire, I guess, of the World Health Organization, possibly under pressure from the Chinese government. There's some question as to how much pressure has been applied to the WHO by China to avoid giving it a designator that blames China in any way, shape, or form. It is sad, and I hate that we needed to be reminded, especially by the social justice nags at places like CNN and MSNBC, that we shouldn't be discriminating against people who look Asian. Because A, they might not be Chinese. B, they might not have been anywhere near China in the last 3 months. And so avoiding Chinatown, Chinese restaurants, Chinese laundries, or people who just look Asian is really overreacting. So I really hate that places like, because they were jumping out on this very, very early. The Washington Post, New York Daily News, left-leaning sites, Daily Beast and places like that, just, taking advantage of this opportunity to scold us out in the heartland that we shouldn't be racist. But sadly, there are some examples of people being really foolish when it comes to this. So sadly, I guess it's still necessary. We need to remind people that while discriminating against somebody just because of the way they look is foolish, on the other hand, we still do need to be prudent about restricting travel to areas where this disease is widespread, especially because research is showing that the incubation period of the disease is longer than we were first told. At first, it was assumed, based on comparisons with SARS from 2002-2003, that it was about a 14-day incubation period. Now they're saying, according to research Sharon dug up yesterday, that the incubation period of this disease may be as long as 30 days. I'd read 24. Now they're saying possibly as long as 30 days, and that people may be shedding virus days, 5-6 days before they begin showing any symptoms. So, airports that are doing nothing more than screening people for elevated body temperature, running a fever, that's really not cutting it, because you just don't know if the person is only 3 days into a 5-day period before they start sneezing and coughing or running a fever. And if you hold them in quarantine for, 14 days, they may still, at some point 2 weeks down the road, may start showing more signs, may actually show signs of the disease then. So this is really turning out to be more problematic than people thought. We found yesterday that, according to a Swedish team, the mean R0 value, and you probably, this is a term I never thought I'd have to become familiar with. The R0 value of this disease is higher than was originally thought as well. The R0 value, you've not heard that it's designated, when you see it on a page, it looks like an R with a 0 next to it, R0. It's the number of people that an average person who's sick with disease can infect. The seasonal flu that goes around every year, when we get all those messages and commercials from pharmacy chains to go get our flu shot, and it's probably free because the government's paying for it, which means we're paying for it anyway, is about 1.3, meaning every person who gets the seasonal flu on average will infect 1.3 other people, which means it spreads, but it's not, epidemic usually. The Spanish flu of 100 years ago, 1918, 1919, the mean R0 value was 2. Each infected person infected 2 others. And you can see how that would be a problem. The current outbreak, COVID-19, they found that in the most recent research, this Swedish team, that the mean R0 value is 3.28. 3.28. That means 2.5 times more infectious on average than the typical seasonal flu, and more than half again more infectious than the Spanish influenza of 100 years ago. Now, the most recent numbers as of today show a flattening of the curve after the spike last week, where suddenly the numbers jumped 30% in a single day, from about 35,000 up to 60,000 in one day. Something like that. Anyway, we're at 69,288 as of this recording, which is about flat from yesterday. And I see from yesterday afternoon to today only 4 additional confirmed deaths from 1666 to 1670. I suspect that just means the official numbers haven't really been updated, even though according to the Johns Hopkins chart, the Johns Hopkins site that's tracking the outbreak, the most recent update was about 90 minutes before this recording, so mid-afternoon Sunday. I don't expect that that's correct. And these numbers assume that the Chinese government is being fully transparent about the cases that they're seeing to begin with, and there are reasons to believe that that's not the case either. The chair of the Public Health Department, Department at Hong Kong University, so this is a professor whose business it is to track disease outbreaks, said that in his opinion, if we don't get ahead of this and bring it under control soon, this could infect as much as 2/3 of the world. Now, what does that mean in terms of numbers of death? If we use a case fatality rate of about 2.5%, which is one of the numbers I've seen out there, but I've also seen it, I've seen a range of numbers. It's still early. We may not actually know what the real case fatality rate of COVID-19 is until a year from now. But even if we assume 2.5%, if it infects 2/3 of the world, that's about 5 billion people, and you just do some rough numbers, that means about 125 million deaths. Spanish influenza of about 100 years ago was estimated to kill between 50 and 100 million people. So this is serious business. I know there are people out there. As I was talking with Daniel Ott last night on the Edge broadcast, and trying my best to play Sharon because Sharon was down with a migraine headache. And so I was basically just trying to summarize the information that we've been talking about behind the scenes. She's really doing all the research and tracking this much better than I am. But there were people in the chat room who were concerned that we were spreading fear, that this was overblown, this was hype, this was to sell vaccines. I really don't think so, because first of all, there's no vaccine. There is a lab in San Diego that claims they created a vaccine that they're going to try to get ready for testing now. Once they got the genetic code, the genetic sequence of this virus, in about 3 hours. They claimed that they invented a vaccine in 3 hours after getting the genetic sequence. Now, actually developing a vaccine from that is a process that'll take months, and then testing it will take some months after that. So even if they were able to develop something that quickly, and I don't understand the science well enough to know if they're telling the truth or not. I'm a little dubious. It sounds too good to be true. We'll see. I hope it's true. I hope this is efficacious, but it still means that once you get past the development and you get past the testing, you're already probably another year down the road. And by then, if the growth rate continues as it has for the last few weeks, where we've been seeing a doubling about every 7 days, there's going to be a lot of people with this disease. So the big question, of course, is where did this virus come from? And there have been a lot of conspiracy theories floated out there as to how it broke out and where it came from. Here is the most plausible scenario that I have seen so far. And this was published by Zero Hedge, zerohedge.com, news site I look at every day, back on Thursday of this week. They pointed out, well, first of all, they pointed out that China's leading biochemical weapons defense expert, a major general by the name of Chen Wei. So the military is now involved. Major General Chen Wei is now in Wuhan to take control of China's response to the outbreak to COVID-19. This doesn't necessarily mean that this is a bioweapon that escaped. It does mean, I think, that the Chinese government finally recognizes that this is a really nasty bug, and they need somebody who understands how a bioweapon might spread to get a handle on it. Now, that said, we looked at some data points that Zero Hedge collected from other research, and I'll put a link in the show notes to this article so you can chase this down, because Zero Hedge did a really good job of linking to these other reports so you can trace the evidence down for yourself. And I'm all about the evidence. When we're speculating, I'll tell you, and I will say that what we're connecting, the dots we're connecting here, don't really draw a smoking gun, but it does suggest some circumstantial evidence that really points in this direction. A couple of Chinese researchers back in 2015 were part of a team working at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. About a 12-man team, 12-person team. I don't know. Some of these may have been women. Let's see, 3, 6, 9, 12, 14, about 14, 15-person team. They worked on developing a novel type of coronavirus, a new coronavirus, to try to develop an immunotherapy. All right, some sort of treatment against another outbreak like SARS back in 2002, 2003, which spread pretty rapidly, killed about 800 people. The one difference, the major difference between SARS then and this virus now is that people started showing symptoms almost right away. So it was easy to identify victims and get them into quarantine, or much easier anyway than it is with this virus. What they did, though, was they took a SARS-like virus. They took a coronavirus that's found natively in the horseshoe bat population in China. And this is a bat that has a pretty wide range in China. So bats are one of the known reservoirs of this particular type of coronavirus. They blended it or merged it with another type of virus to create a chimeric virus. And I'm quoting this now from the abstract for their paper. A chimeric virus expressing the spike of bat coronavirus SHC-014 in a mouse-adapted SARS coronavirus backbone. So they took the spike, which is the crown around the coronavirus, which is what helps it to bind with the receptor cells inside the human respiratory system, and inserted it into a mouse-adapted SARS coronavirus. They found, and why did they do that? Because the ACE2 receptor, which is the receptor, as I understand it, that the coronavirus, this type of coronavirus binds with, the ACE2 receptors in mice are very similar to human ACE2 receptors. So they're testing it to see if a virus in bats could jump to humans without going through an intermediate species like pigs. That was the reason for doing this. And then to see if they could develop some sort of immunotherapy, either a vaccine or an antiviral treatment. All right? I hope I'm explaining this effectively because this is not my background. I barely understand this myself. The bottom line is this. They found that it did successfully replicate not only in vitro in the dish, but in vivo inside the mice. Additionally, they added evaluation of available SARS-based immune therapeutic and prophylactic modalities revealed poor efficacy. Both monoclonal antibody and vaccine approaches failed to neutralize and protect from coronaviruses utilizing the novel spike protein. End quote. In other words, they created this Frankenvirus with the spike from the bat, and they could not come up with a vaccine or an antiviral treatment to stop it. All right? So this was the paper that they published back in 2015 at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. This kicked off a firestorm of debate in the academic community because other researchers said, "Whoa, do you guys realize what you're doing here? This is really dangerous." Quoting from an article in Nature magazine, other virologists question whether the information gleaned from the experiment justifies the potential risk. Although the extent of any risk is difficult to assess, Simon Wayne Hobson, a virologist at the Pasteur Institute in Paris, points out that the researchers have created a novel virus that, quote, grows remarkably well, end quote, in human cells. If the virus escaped, nobody could predict the trajectory, he says. Richard Ebright, a molecular biologist and biodefense expert at Rutgers, said the only impact of this work is the creation in a lab of a new non-natural risk. So why do we bring all of this up considering that this was done at the University of North Carolina 4 years ago? Because two of the researchers, Zhengli Shi and Xingyi Ge, are now working at the Wuhan Virology Institute, which is very close to the epicenter of this coronavirus outbreak. So, it is circumstantial evidence, but it does point to the possibility, or the most plausible explanation, if you ask me, for the outbreak occurring in Wuhan is that these researchers brought their work back to China with them to try to develop a treatment or a vaccine, and somebody at the lab did not follow proper protocol, and somehow the virus got out. Somebody got infected, brought it with them into the city, and here we are. Interestingly enough, one of these researchers, Zhengli Shi, has written a new report that was published shortly after the outbreak that was blaming, and this was published on January 20th, blaming this pneumonia outbreak with a new coronavirus of probable bat origin. Zhengli Shi is one of the co-authors of this new paper published on January 20th. Now, is it possible the Chinese government held off on releasing information about COVID-19 until after this paper was published, so they could say, well, no, it came from the bats. It came from a cave. Well, okay, that's a possible other explanation. So either a coronavirus spontaneously mutated and jumped straight from bats to humans at a wet market in Wuhan, or at some random cave in China, or Chinese scientists working on a vaccine or an antiviral treatment to a coronavirus at the Wuhan Virology Institute didn't follow correct sanitation protocols. That appears to be where we are as of right now. But interestingly, the United States government in 2014, this is during the Obama administration, put a moratorium on federal funding of research of this type, precisely because it's really dangerous. So again, as of this recording, it appears the growth curve on the official numbers is flattened out, but it's hard to tell if that's accurate or because of what the Chinese government is choosing to report. We'll find out in the days and weeks ahead. As we've been saying, though, for the last couple of weeks, and we tried to make this point really clear, everywhere we've been where we've been speaking about this, is that we are not given a spirit of fear as followers of Jesus Christ. The time, while we have it here in the United States, right now, the official case count here in the U.S. is only 15. This would be the time for us to take advantage of the calm before the storm. We pray the storm doesn't get here, but at the very least, we've got an opportunity now to stock up on some things that might be useful if, in fact, we do have to shelter in place for a while. Because ultimately, it appears that with no natural immunity, no vaccine, and no treatment for this disease, that really is the best way to avoid its spread, is everybody to stay home for a while. So make sure you've got the things you need at home: food, water, medical supplies, or you can stay home for a couple of weeks and maybe have some extra so that if your neighbors are starting to freak out, you can share with them not just the extra food or supplies, but the love of Jesus Christ. Because frankly, the only time some people will listen to the gospel is when they're scared out of their wits. So, you heard the announcement a little while ago about the Hear the Watchman coming up March 5th through 8th. We hope we can see you there. Just remember, the promo code Gilbert20 saves you $20 on the tickets. And the place to go to register for that conference is hearthewatchman.com. In April, late April, we'll be going to the United Kingdom, the Scottish Bible Prophecy Conference. Jim Barfield, Director of the Copper Scroll Project, Pastor Billy Crone, Evangelist Stephen Wright, coming over from Northern Ireland. That should be a testimony to hear. Sharon and I will be speaking as well, and all five of us will be speaking each of the 3 days. So we've got a lot of time to talk with you and answer questions. And I think the information that we'll be bringing is a little different from what you'll hear in churches on Sunday morning. Not to take anything away from pastors who are preaching the gospel, but we dig into some of the deeper corners, the darker corners, the weird parts of the Bible to try to show you why they're important. And of course, Jim Barfield's research into the Copper Scroll is just absolutely fascinating. Troon, Scotland, that's Ayrshire. Walker Hall in Troon, it's right on the coast, April 24th through 26th. For information, Scottish Bible Prophecy Conference.brushfire.com. Sharon and I, honored to be a part of the Prophecy Watchers Conference coming up in Colorado Springs in June. We've got two to attend in June. June 18th through 21st, Sharon and I will be at Future Vision 2020. That's at the Colorado Springs Marriott. Tom Horn will be speaking at this conference. Tom keeps saying, I'm going to quit speaking at conferences, and here he is at another one. Tom Horn, Ellie Marzulli, Pastor Billy Crone, again, Timothy Alberino, Lieutenant Colonel Bob McGinnis, Dr. Michael Lake, Ken Johnson, Carl Tykrib, Joel Richardson. Well, this is just an all-star lineup, and I hate to use that phrase in the context of Christian scholars and preachers, but boy, these are people you really have a difficult time deciding which presentation to attend. For more information and to reserve your place for Future Vision 2020, June 18th through 21st in Colorado Springs, log on to prophecywatchers.com. Then the following weekend, we go to San Antonio, the Battle Ready Conference. Russ Dizdar, Pastor Carl Gallups, Messianic Rabbi Zev Porat, Pastor Casper McLeod, Brandon Gallup, Stephen Bankars will be there as well. There'll be a special pre-conference concert by Cutlass on June 25th. John Schlitt will also be there. Don't miss this one. Sharon and I honored to be speakers at this conference again. It's at the Grand Hyatt San Antonio, June 25th through 28th, the Battle Ready Conference. Find out more and reserve your place, battlereadyconference.org. And then we move into July for the True Legends Conference. This year, the theme, Ancient Cataclysms and Coming Catastrophes, Pre-Adam, and the Return of the Days of Noah. I'm honored to be speaking this year, as well as, I don't know if I'll be doing any MC work, but whatever they need, happy to be there. Steve Quayle, L.A. Marzulli, Dr. Michael Lake, Gary Wayne, Carl Treikerb, Russ Dizdar, and more. Daniel Holdings, who will be a guest on a very near... Let's see, a SkyWatch TV web exclusive coming very soon. He's written a book with Steve Quayle, and so we'll be talking to him very soon about that. Anyway, True Legends Conference at the Mansion Theater in Branson, July 10th through 12th. Gen6.com to get your tickets, gen6.com. The Igniting a Fire Conference coming from Hear the Watchman. This will be in Boise, Idaho, September 4th through 6th. Still early days on the planning for this one, but I do know that we'll be there with our colleagues from SkyWatch TV, Donna Howell and Allie Anderson-Henson. So we hope we can see you in Boise, September 4th through 6th. HearTheWatchman.com for more information there. And then the week, well, we go right from there. We'll be there on that Friday night, and then we'll travel on Saturday over to Seattle for the Glacier Prophecy Summit. This is an Alaska cruise with our friends from Hear the Watchman, Gary Stearman, Bob Ulrich, L.A. Marzulli will be there, Pastor Billy Crone again, Jeff Kinley, Dr. Larry Allison, and more. For more information on the Glacier Prophecy Summit, log on to glacierprophecysummit.com. And then, of course, our Tour of Israel with SkyWatch TV, October 12th through 25th, with an optional 4-day extension to Sardinia to see the megalithic sites there, or a separate tour of Sardinia. We've got two options here. The separate tour of Sardinia, October 29th through November 5th. So we'll be out of the country from October 12th through November 5th. And if you want more information on that, we got a new website for you now, skywatchinisrael.com. Takes you right to the page with all the information, the itineraries, and cost and everything. And new, lower cost, by the way, on the Israel portion of the tour. You'll find out more at skywatchinisrael.com. Next week, I'm going to bring you some audio from a recent interview with Jim Barfield as we look ahead to the Scottish Bible Prophecy Conference, and, of course, another update on what's happening with COVID-19. So we appreciate you bringing us in your ears tonight, wherever you're listening, whether it's Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever else you find us. We hope you take a moment to leave a review. It helps other people find us. And, of course, that is wherever fine podcasts are sold. Give us a like, the View from the Bunker page at Facebook, facebook.com/viewfromthebunker, which is a production of Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Our opening theme is Iron Bacon by Kevin MacLeod. His website, www.incompetech.com. Our announcer is DC Good. And we do this because we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.